Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2021 horror sequel. Yes, it is a sequel. Candyman, a film that is directed by Nia Dacosta, has Jordan Peele on board, I believe, as a producer and a writer, and it stars Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. We also have Tanaya Paris, Vanessa Williams in the film. Now, this film, I don't normally do spoilers in film reviews because it's just not what I tend to do. I don't feel as though I can review this film effectively in any way, really, without giving some spoilers away here. So, if you don't want to watch this review and see any spoilers, then probably don't continue with this review until you've watched the film yourself. Now, after watching this film, I feel like I have quite a lot to say about this film. Now, I think the 1992 Candyman film is a really classic horror film. It's one of those films that I used to watch all the time, when I was a youngster, a young man sort of thing. It was really effective horror film, and it was almost a dark fairy tale to some degree. I always felt there was like a romantic element to it. It was, it was poetic at times, and I thought Tony Todd's performance was iconic. Just the voice and his presence, and it was really mysterious and different. You'd never really seen horror like it before. Now, I am never opposed to reboots, remakes, whatever you want to call them. I mean, this was many thought this was like going to be like a reboot or a remake, but in actual fact, it is now confirmed it is a direct sequel to the first one. However, they do play fast and loose here with the Candyman mythos. Some will like it, some won't. I'm not overly keen on it, but we'll get into that a little bit later. What is the story about? Well, Yaya's character, Anthony McCoy, is a local artist. He is investigating Cabrini Green. He gets inspired by what he sees there, He gets inspired by the area, and he gets drawn in by this story of Candyman. He decides to focus his next art project on this very story of Candyman. And lo and behold, he unleashes Candyman upon the world. Right. What my thoughts on Candyman are this. I think this is a flawed film. I think it's very stylized. I think it's shot beautifully. I think the performances are all absolutely fine. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got a lovely slow burn to it. I like horrors like sometimes with a nice slow burn. It takes its time to let the story breathe, to tell the story. But ultimately, I'm just not keen what they've done with the Candyman story here. Ultimately, the story that we get in the first Candyman, this is where the spoilers are coming in, guys, is that the Tony Todd character was essentially, he fell in love with the wrong woman. He fell in love with a white woman. He was punished for this. He had his hand chopped off. He was covered in honey. We know the story, and that's how he became Candyman. It was a love story gone wrong. The Candyman we're presented in this film is a different Candyman. Apparently now, anybody who is wronged or is in injustice in some way can become Candyman. So the Candyman in this film is someone who was handing out sweets to children that was wrongly murdered by the police, and he is now the Candyman. But anybody who is wronged and there is some injustice to their death can become the new Candyman. I just feel as though this was a poor choice, honestly. I really do. And Candyman almost becomes a passenger in his own film here. This essentially is an origin story of Yaya's journey to becoming Candyman. And again, that's a major spoiler here. And I just felt the other Candyman that's portrayed in this film, you barely see him. You barely see any of the kills here in this film. It's all, shots away You see he pulls the blood here and there. You see a few bees flying around. You get a couple of gory scenes here and there, but it's in no way, I don't think, is anywhere near as effective as the first film, the first Candyman. It just didn't work for me. How they decided to change the mythos of Candyman. What's wrong with the Tony Todd story? It was fine. So yeah, there were aspects of this story that I was just uncomfortable with. There's a shooting at the end of the film. I was just uncomfortable. It was almost, it felt political almost. The shooting at the end of the film, of this innocent man lying in the arms of a woman who needed assistance, and there's no questions asked. He's shot and killed. Bollocks! It just wouldn't happen. I just don't buy it. I know there's many people out there who will point to all the injustices in the world, and I agree there are many of them. But the way this film set it up, it didn't work. It broke its own rules of calling Candyman by saying his name 5 times in a mirror, and the murdered there and then on the spot. And then later on in the film, there's a character does it, says it. She's fine, but everybody else around her is killed. Breaks its own rules, basically. There are some interesting social commentary themes going on here that it's trying to say something important, but I think the major aspect that I think this film got wrong is the first Candyman. This is just my opinion. The first Candyman was a horror film first that spoke on it a lot, really effectively on social commentary. Even back in the 90s, it had a lot to say on social commentary. This one, I think, reversed that, and it has more to say on social commentary and forgets to be a horror film. It's a horror film second. So it's trying to put its own message across first, and it's trying to be a horror film second. And criminally, I just didn't feel scared watching this. It didn't feel scary to me. There is a couple of effective scenes. Yes, there's a couple of gore scenes. But I don't remember feeling chills. And I certainly remember with the first Candyman. And I wanted to rewatch it and do a review for that before I saw this, but I never had that chance. But I will rewatch it. But I have seen it a few times, the first Candyman. I remember having chills with that one. I remember it being scary. I remember it being, like I say, almost romantic and mystical. And I remember it being far more scary than this. And I just think this one kind of fails to be a really effective horror film. I don't think it's terrible, this film. I really don't. I think it is effective in some aspects. Maybe I would have enjoyed it better if they'd have just completely rebooted it and forgot about the first film. Because I think its clumsy efforts of tying it to the first film, I think, were disrespectful to the first film almost to me. So if you're going to do it your own way, just do it your own way and just tell your own story. Leave the first one alone if you like, because I think its attempts at tying the two films together are quite clumsily done. And if the case that anybody could become Candyman, it almost seemed like there'd been dozens of Candyman over the past 100 or so years, the film implies. I think this film would have worked far better if they'd have just used Tony Todd for the majority of the film. They could have used him effectively. I know he's aged a lot, but they could have still used him effectively. And then the origin story of Yaya's character, Anthony, to become the new Candyman, I think if they'd made that a little bit more effective, took the time to tell that story a little bit better and didn't rush the ending like it felt, then he could have passed the hook, so to speak, to this new Candyman, rather than the fact that the whole first Candyman story feels so diluted because the story they try and tell that anybody can be Candyman. If you are wronged, you've got some injustice that's happened to you, you can be the next Candyman almost. I think it would have been better if they'd have just kept it Tony Todd and he passes the torch to Yaya for the future films. I think that would have been more effective, and it would have helped Yaya's origin story as well. So I didn't hate the film at all. I did think it was effective. I did enjoy aspects of it. I just didn't like how they tried to combine the two films. I thought that was quite clumsy. But I will give this one a 6 out of 10. It is worth checking out. If you've never seen the first Candyman, You won't be completely lost, I don't think, but it certainly helps, but also it hinders at the same time. So yeah, that's my thoughts and reviews on Candyman. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for watching. I will be back with more reviews on the channel very, very soon.